Hello, good evening. Hello, happy winter solstice. Winter solstice evening here in Ireland in the Moyne Valley. And what a solstice it has been today has been a little bit disappointing from the point of view of the weather. We had a total overcast day, but we get those days in Ireland. Thing is, we got sunshine yesterday, so we can't complain too loudly. Anyway, greetings of the shortest days of the year to you all. Hope you're keeping safe and well. While thinking in the past few days about the episode, I realized, look, it's on winter solstice evening, so it makes sense to discuss Newgrange and the winter solstice in this episode. Anyway, it's great to see you all. I hope that no matter where you are in the world, you're safe and well and healthy, and that indeed you are celebrating the winter solstice in your own way. The main thing is that the shortest of the days and the longest of the nights have come, and from here on, the days get longer and the nights get shorter. Summer's coming, basically. On YouTube this evening, Daisy Peters is the first to say hello. Says hi, Anthony, and all of our Tua de Mythflix. A very blessed winter solstice to all there. And right back at you, Daisy. Always a pleasure to see you. Perfecto Production says cloudy all day. Snort. Yes, indeed. When there's a once-in-a-lifetime astronomical event that requires an hour or two of clear skies, Ireland ain't the place to be. The full Irish GK says Trononoma. Good Tua. I spent the evening yesterday gazing at the sun shining off the white quartz walls in Newgrange. As the sun fell, I heard an ancient horn sounded in fields far away. Lovely stuff. We heard those horns yesterday morning in the background on the live stream from Newgrange. Mandy McCurl is in the house sipping a pale ale after sky watching. Wow. Mandy, you have the life. It sounds lovely. Listen to a Jungian talk today and got this quote. The oldest form of medicine is enchantment. Feeling blessed. Happy solstice, everyone, and happy solstice to you, Mandy. Lovely to see you as always. Who else have we got? Archaeoastronomy Database is glad to be here for the winter solstice, and we're glad to have you. Jackie Stevenson says hello to everyone. Glad to be here. Hello, Jackie. John Main says Banachthi on Tuagalair. Happy solstice, the start of a new year full of hope and love. Also, mince pies and a cup of tea. Sounds good, John. Deborah Williams is in Hillsborough, Maryland, and says, hope all are fine. Yes, all good so far. Carl Deegan says, hello, I was going to head to Newgrange today, only access was not permitted to the area. Yes, a public free zone today, but sure, the monument is getting its own little bit of rest and recuperation. Marianne Kindya is in the house, and Marianne is in, sorry, I lost my place there. There's a hell of a lot of people on Facebook, so I'm sorry if I'm going to miss comments. Hello to all from Connecticut. Hello, Marianne. Lovely to see you. Sandrine Brady, bonsoir, super Tua. The weather today doesn't give us a chance to see anything but big clouds full of rain. Too bad, so sad. No sun, no Saturn, no Jupiter. I'm only glad, Sandrine, that I've had plenty of opportunity over the past fortnight to capture nice views of it. So I still have pictures of their close approach. Saoirse Chandal says, Anthony August Natua, happy winter solstice and great conjunction. Greenstad an Gauri August Conosk Moore Honna Jeev. Thank you very much, Saoirse. August Ortfain. I hope you're in good form. Stephen Walker says, hi, everybody. Happy holidays. Yes, indeed, Stephen. Hello. Sue Prenter says, good evening. Such a great few days. Always find that these are days full of lovely energy. But anyway, 8-Bit Games says, been waiting all day for this. Good stuff. Hope I don't disappoint. Daniel Kilo Echo 8, Papa Uniform Lima says, good day, Anthony. I want to thank you for getting me into the hobby of ham. 7-3. Great to hear it, Daniel. You're 5'9" in Echo India, and good to get you into the log, as it were, by slightly different means. What band are we on here exactly? How many gigahertz? Laurie Flynn says hello from Rhode Island, New England, USA. Hello, Laurie. You're welcome along. Stephen Brown. I tried to see Saturn and Jupiter. Didn't see anything in Navan. Yeah, very, very cloudy here, unfortunately. Archaeoastronomy Database wants to share an amazing solstice discovery. Sounds interesting. Share it later. Good stuff. Gillian Stapleton says, good evening on this lovely winter solstice. Yes, indeed, Gillian. Good evening to you. And on Facebook, I think I have a chance that I'm going to miss comments because they're coming up so fast. Juliana De Silva. Hello, Juliana. Barbara Barney is in the house. Hello, Barbara. Real Dixa Jr. says respect and also to you. Charlie Grover says good evening, good to hear you. Hello, Charlie. Peter Donald says hello, all Giaguch. Donna Jean Porter says hello. August Tussa Fain. Donna Brady Tussy says good evening, Anthony, and all who have joined. Yes, Brady, good to see you on this winter solstice as the year turns again. Robert Friend says solstice blessings. Thanks, Robert. Good evening to you. Monica Muggy Erstad says greetings from Copenhagen. A very good night to you, Monica, from the Boyne Valley. Miriam McTira says, I'm really hoping for clear skies here in Oregon to view the conjunction. Let's keep the fingers crossed. We didn't have so much luck in Ireland. Mark Gordon says, blessed winter solstice, everyone. Thanks, Mark. Esther Guggisberg is in the house. Hello, Anthony, and hello, dear Tua. Hello to you, Esther. Happy solstice. Sabrina Spaziani says, hello from Vancouver. Good evening to the west coast of Canada. Great to see you in the house, Sabrina. Juliana da Silva says, I'm in Brazil. Here is summer solstice. So blessings of winter solstice for you all. Yes, indeed. You're at the peak of the year, and we're at the bottom of the year, but it'll turn. Shiv Sullivan says, lit a midwinter fire to welcome the light. Lovely stuff. Donna Fire is in Maryland and says, happy solstice to all the Tua. Hello, Donna. Barb Jordan says, hi, everyone. Gia Gutch. Stephen O'Hara is in the house. YouTube camera isn't working, though we can hear you. Is it? Oh, anybody on YouTube having problems seeing the image? That's not good. Or maybe that's perfect. Maybe it's just the voice is better without the face. Michael Daly says, hello from Massachusetts. Hello, Michael. Sean Marchetti says, Greenstad, Angari, Honna, Giev, Acharja. Thanks, Sean. Alex Casterton is in the house, celebrating with mead and music. So I'll watch back, but had to say happy solstice on Sláinte to the mighty Tua. Sláinte, yes, indeed. Have a great time. Marcia Montero says hello from Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Hello, Marcia, and happy summer solstice to you from a winter solstice-y Boyne Valley. Susan Long says hello. Okay, there's a few people saying all good, working fine on YouTube, so I'm not sure if that was just one person having a problem. Alwyn Roy Badziak is in the house. Hi, Anthony. Hi, everyone. Happy winter solstice. Giagich, Alwyn, Elaine Duffy says blessings to you all. August Banachti, Ort Fain, Elaine. Ralph Waldron says Banachti Tua Os Leag Falche, Ralph Trononowa. Liam Smith says, hello, Anthony and gang. Happy solstice. Yes, indeed. A happy day. Jackie Custers is in County Meath, not far from Newgrange. Hello, Jackie. Very lucky, aren't we, to live so close to it. Heidi Hrasna says hello from New Hampshire. Hello to the New Hampshireans. I'm sure there's a better way of saying that. Julie King says happy solstice, blessings to ye all. Thank you, Julie. Welcome and blessings also. Roberta Duffy says happy winter solstice from Los Angeles. And there's a snowman, so I presume it's cold in LA right now. Tom King is in the house. Hello, Anthony, all the mighty Tua. Happy solstice to one and all. Grand stretch in the evening. Yes, and I just wanted to say that I'm wearing a new one tonight. Thank you, courtesy of Tom. And that is the Swan Pendant. Isn't that beautiful? The Swan Spiral, capturing two very, very important essences of Newgrange, the spiral symbol and the swan, which is so important in the mythology of the monument. So thank you, Tom, for that. Sabrina says, snowing in Vancouver. Yeah. Anne-Marie Fitzgerald says, Banachty O'Hiri. Hello, Anne-Marie. I won't say up the dubs because I don't really fancy them either. You know, they just keep winning the bloody thing. Poor Mayo, huh? Veronica McGreevy is inviting our friend in. Desiree Riley's in the house. Hello to Anthony, all the Tua. Hope everyone is doing well, all in good form. Desiree, the fur balls are in good shape too. My wife says hello and thank you for your message. Carolyn Marie Shipley says happy solstice. Hello, Carolyn. Same to you. Elaine Duffy, blessings to all. Banachty, Stephen O'Hara. Oh, it's okay now. My fault. Brilliant stuff, Stephen. You got it sorted. Shannon Stater, Tina says happy solstice from California. Hello, Shannon. Kelly Gilheany says Australia isn't much clearer. Really? I am surprised about that. But good morning to you, Kelly. Chris Haney Lang says hi from southern Arizona. Looking forward to seeing the great conjunction this evening. Happy solstice to all. And best wishes with your observations, Chris. Sheila Gunn is in Canada and says hello. Fáilte, Sheila. Barbara Kling says Greenstad Sonna. Happy solstice from Vermont. Hello, Barbara. Right back at you. Jules' cousin says solstice blessings. You too. Susan Long is in Iowa in the USA. Happy solstice to you, Susan. Helen Hirsch Chatter says happy solstice, wishing a year of good health to all. Yes, we could certainly do with that. Rebecca Fetcher says happy solstice from North Carolina in the United States. Wish we could be back in Ireland to celebrate. Stay safe. We will celebrate on your behalf. Peter Kennedy says happy solstice from Ballybrigeen. Fáilte, Peter, and happy solstice to you. Kristen Gray Taggart is in the house. Gra more August Solas. The light is needed more than ever. Federica Guy is in the house. Hi, Anthony and Tua. Happy solstice and blessings to you all. A very good evening to you, Federica. Lovely to see you again. Marie Lendon says Fáilte Tua, blessings, and we've made it through the longest night. Happy conjunction. Let's keep the fingers crossed. Gail Farley says Yule greetings from Ann Arbor, Michigan. Hello, Gail. Welcome along. Mariana Dunn is in Alexandria in Virginia and says happy solstice to all. Indeed, happy solstice to you. Nick Eska Casterton says, good evening, Anthony and the lovely Tua. Happy solstice to you all. Yes, indeed. Lovely to see the Castertons as always. Jackie says, hello, August Foscarwa, the Huila Dinner. Don't know words for happy solstice in Scottish Gaelic yet. I'm sure somebody will help you. We have some very helpful Scottish Gaelgors. Hello from overcast and snowing southern Alberta, Canada. Blessed solstice to all. Hello, Linda. It's great to see you. Chris Rooney says, having a wee water of life in Dubai. Thanks, Anthony. Yes, I wonder. Yes, well, we shouldn't mention brands in case anybody thinks we're advertising. I tasted a Tullamore Dew the other day. Oh, sublime. Xandru Reguera says, Merry Solstice, Anthony and Tua. And right back to you also, Xandru. Susan Miller says, hello there. Happy holidays. Yes, thank you, Susan, and best wishes to you. Donna Fire wants to know what will happen after the conjunction. Will the planets begin to move apart again? Yes, absolutely. They continue on their course through the sky, not to meet for another 20 years. Excuse me, Leslie Roy says, I just paused a 2-hour special on Newgrange to check in to say happy solstice. Brilliant, Leslie. Sounds like a, where is this Newgrange special? We won't distract them. Kathy Archibald, I hope you enjoy it, says happy solstice from Alberta in Canada. Hello to you, Kathy, and happy solstice. Vanita McGuire says happy solstice from Woodward, Oklahoma. And happy solstice to you also, Vanita. Patricia McAteer is in the house. So happy solstice from Omeath. Very cloudy here still, as it is here in Drogheda. Great to see a fellow Lothian in the house. Hello, Patricia. Monica Muggy Erstad says, may the blessings of the light be on you, light without and light within. May the blessed sunlight shine on you and warm your heart till it grows like a great peat fire. Lovely stuff, Monica. Thanks for that. Nora Gaffney O'Connor says, hi, Anthony and Tua. Céin chuí a bhfuil sibh go léir, tá mé go maith. Great solstice swim today. Great pick of conjunction, Anthony. Happy solstice, everyone. Thanks indeed. And happy solstice, Nora. Dawn Hilton is in the house from Lancashire. It says, happy solstice to everyone. Hello, Dawn. Leslie Roy says, happy solstice from Massachusetts. You too also, Leslie. Anne McCallum is in the house. Yay, live Irishman, something normal in an abnormal world. Hello, Anthony and the mighty Tua, the Antone. Happy solstice, everyone. Not the best day to get up at 3:30 this morning, but watched yesterday's wonderful show as well. Yesterday mornings was lovely, wasn't it? Jacqueline Marie says, happy winter solstice from Alabama. Hello, Jacqueline, and happy solstice. Martine Cano Manley says, bon solstice from Mick and Tinu Manley in Oraison in the south of France. Bonsoir, and happy solstice. Enjoy the great conjunction, says Michael Connor. Thank you, Michael. Mar Watts is also in France and says, hello, bonsoir. Jacinta Paisley says, happy solstice to everyone and Christmas. Thanks, Jacinta. I hope Santa is good to everyone. Turnonowa from Coatbridge, Scotland, from Neil, and I hope Mary. Hello to Santa Claus and the Snowman too. Mary and Neil have their place. Hush Tina with Tay August Fion Jarrag. Clouds for this morning at Brunabonia. It was so predictable yet so disappointing, but solstice blessings to all the Tua. Asher, it's bound to happen. It happens at least one day every year. Janet Moran says, whoops, almost missed you. Well, glad you didn't. And welcome, Janet. Happy solstice. Kathy Archibald says it's cloudy in Alberta for the solstice. Blessings. Indeed. The sun is standing still for several days, so we'll get another shot at it. Susan Scott says, hello all, happy winter solstice. The sun just came out at 3 p.m. in northwest Connecticut, so I'm hopeful for tonight. Well, best of luck with that, Susan. Okay. Movanway Millward says, happy winter solstice, dear too, and Anthony. Cloudy in mid Wales, no stars. Yeah, it's going across that way, isn't it? Stacey Herman Lawrence says hi to everyone making Hamantashen while listening in. Happy solstice. Now, I haven't a clue what that is, so somebody will have to educate me. Bridget Spalding says, happy solstice from Kilmuckridge. Is that an alcoholic beverage, Stacey, or is it something else? Is it cake? The only one thing I get more excited about than a nice whiskey, and that is a slice of cake. Pamela Guthrow says, Merry Christmas from Richmond, Virginia, and many happy returns, Pamela. April Michael Freed says, happy winter solstice from Michigan, and the same right back at you. Henry Paddy Shearman is in the house, says, evening, Anthony, evening too. I forgot, it was Monday. Sure, it's easy it's easy, it happens, doesn't it? Cleena Nivorku says, and there's another Murphy in the house, happy winter solstice to you all. And same back at you, Cleena. Always delighted to see another Murphy in the house. I'm apologies about my pronunciation. Arlene Mock on, is it lenited? So is it Mock on Ollie or is it Mock on Folly? Hi, Anthony. Happy solstice. Really special this year with Jupiter and Saturn alignment. I think this also occurred in Bethlehem over 2,000 years ago. Merry Christmas, everyone. Hello, Eileen, and Merry Christmas to you. Jennifer Ellen Nehelania says, happy solstice. You too, Jennifer. Good evening. Jody Main Cummings says, happy winter solstice from San Francisco. Hello, Jody. Happy solstice. Helena Breen says, Sláinte, August. Ort Fain, Helena. Louise Sherrill is in the house and says, hello. Hello, Louise. Helena Breen says, beautiful. Jeremy Prosperi says, hello from Louisiana. Hello, Jeremy. Another Louisianian in the house. Nuala Doyle says, hi all. And hi, Anthony. Hello, Nuala. Erin Durrett is in the house. Merry almost solstice and Christmas to all the dear Tua. Love to you, Anthony, and may you and your family have a wonderful solstice. Raining hard right now, but still hoping to see the conjunction tomorrow. Yeah, well, that's the spirit. We had good views of it in the last couple of nights, and I'm happy with the pictures that I got. So can't ask for much more than that, apart from it being clear on the actual night of their closest approach. But what can you do? Brendan Byrne says, good evening all on this special day. Wet tonight, so no trip to Turlock Hill to see Saturn and Jupiter. Yeah, stay on the settee. Yvette Tillema says, hi, have a beautiful solstice, Tua and Mr. Murphy. Thank you, Yvette. Lovely to see you as always. Jeremy Prosperi says, happy solstice. Same to you, Jeremy. Can you explain the tree spiral, Anthony? Thanks, says Karina Walsh. Can I? I can make an effort, but who knows? Yes, we'll talk about that, of course. No problem. Pamela Guthrow is saying, Merry Christmas from Richmond, Virginia, USA, and many happy returns, Pamela. Antonia is in cloudy Cork and says, hello. Good evening, Antonia. Welcome along. Valerie Gallagher says, greetings, Anthony and Tua. Happy solstice from Rhode Island. Bit of sun peeking through as we head towards sunset. Maybe we'll see the conjunction. Let's cross the fingers. Helena Breen says, happy solstice from London. Thank you, Helena. Happy solstice to you. Joan Finglas Healy says, hi, Anthony. Happy solstice from New Jersey. Hello, Joan. Happy solstice to you. Pamela is praying for a white Christmas. My wife would love a white Christmas. Rex Fortenberry says, greetings from Baton Rouge. Banachty Greenstad, the Gochdina. Thank you, Rex, and happy solstice to you. Jennifer Foley is wishing everyone a happy solstice. Thanks, Jennifer. Kimberly Field Sipola is in the house, says, happy solstice, Anthony and Tua. And you too, Kimberly. Anne Scott Doherty says, greetings from Grants Pass, which I think is in Oregon. Hello, Anne. Lovely to see you. Samantha Healy, good evening, everyone. Good solstice all. Blessings to all. Hello, Anthony. Hello, Samantha. Thank you. Paul Campbell is in the house. It's easy to share this Facebook Live event on your own Facebook newsfeed so others can see by pressing the share icon and then pressing right post and then pressing the post icon. Good plan, Paul. Because viewer numbers are up tonight, but I suspect that's because it's solstice. And you're all very welcome, of course. Samantha Healy says, happy solstice to a family. And same to you, Samantha. Many happy returns. Margaret Kiernan says, happy winter solstice. Hope all you guys are open to a happy Christmas. All best wishes, Anthony, and the amazing Tua. Thanks, Margaret, and many happy returns. Tell Anne and the pups hi. I said hello. Desiree says, yes, indeed, I will. No problem. Grace Walker says, been a while. Bless you all. Welcome along, Grace. Sláinte. Paul Campbell says, greetings from Galway City in Ireland. Thanks, Paul. Rowan Grove says, greetings and solstice blessings. Hello, Rowan. Nice to see you. Grace Walker, bless you all from New York. Thanks, Grace. Merry solstice indeed. Happy solstice to you. Lexi Erickson says, bright solstice blessings. Thanks, Lexi. Wow. Deborah Milat McKinnon says, hello from Boston. Happy solstice. Been watching the planets get closer and closer. Meteor showers. Yes, indeed. Fantastic lately. Andrea Donnelly, some nice Geminid meteors seen lately too. Happy solstice, everyone from Rhode Island. Thank you, Andrea. Hugo says, happy solstice from Porto in northern Portugal. Hello, Hugo. Happy solstice to you. Adina Sparks, slipping in a few months, say hello. Hello. Helping my grandson with school today. Happy solstice all. Well, give him an education about Newgrange and the solstice. Tara Bannon Williamson says, hi, tune in to your myth. Is that still happening? Yes, but we always like to say hello to each other first, which is part of the ritual, as it were. But yes, there will be stories and myths, and there'll be loads of stuff. Solstice blessings from Wiltshire, says Veronica. Hello, Veronica. Shannon Meehan says, hello from Chicago. Clouds here too. The cloudy city. Hello, Shannon. Mary Hayden says, solstice blessings to you all from cloudy Prince Edward Island in Canada. Hello, Mary. Solstice blessings to you also. Grace says, I've been away for too long. Well, you're welcome back. Don't worry. Nancy Sterling says, hello, happy solstice, everyone from Vermont. Antonia K. Moore says, happy conjunction plus winter solstice. Also, my mother's first anniversary. She chose wisely. You'll be thinking about her, Antonia, I'm sure. Chris Rooney says, the photos were wonderful from Doubt. Thanks, Chris. That was a very special day. That was 5 minutes of sunshine in an otherwise overcast day. It was brilliant. Sheila Moylan says, happy Greenstad. Same to you, Sheila. Great to see you. Keep up the great artwork. So many wonderful artists displaying their work on the Mythical Ireland community lately. Catherine Hupp says, cheers from Colorado in the USA. Hello, Catherine. Happy solstice to you. Stacey explains that Haman Stashen is an apricot-filled folded cookie. Yeah, that sounds nice. Send me one of those. Desiree says, we got at least 3 of us from Louisiana watching today. Brilliant stuff. All the Louisianians are welcome. Morwena Blogs says, morning from a wet Melbourne. I thought Australia was dry and hot all the time, but there you go. They do sometimes get some rain. Happy day after solstice morning to you, Morwena. Your day's already, sorry, you're in summer, so your day's already starting to shorten. Angad Kaur says, greetings and solstice blessings. Yes, many happy returns. Rob Best in Boston says, blessed solstice. Thank you, Rob, and many happy returns. Paula Farrell is in County Down. It says, solstice blessings to you all. Banachdi, Paula. Paula Barber says, blessed solstice from Nebraska. Hello, Paula. Colleen Howe says, happy solstice from Limerick. Oh, hang on. Yeah, just remembered I have to... yes, just remember there's something I do have to mention before we start. Colleen says, happy solstice from Limerick. Hello, Colleen. Diana Cordero Texera says, hello from Portugal. Another viewer from Portugal. Hello, happy solstice. Santa on a shelf, lol, says Rob. Richard Odell says, happy winter solstice and happy Christmas from Northern California. Brilliant stuff. We really have an international audience in tonight. Hello to our Californian friends on this shortest day of the year. Cyril Martin, I'm sure my relatives Bob and Annie Hickey would have loved this web show. Happy solstice to those present and past. Cyril, that's very interesting because the Hickeys, of course, were for those who don't know, were the custodians of Newgrange for, it was at least half a century, wasn't it? Perhaps as much as 60 years. And yeah, in the old days, he used to go and knock on their door, and one or other of them would bring some candles and a key and unlock the gate and bring you inside Newgrange. Back in the days before international tourism and heritage promotion. Brendan Byrne. The 3 spirals, the Shamrock and the Trinity seems like a common thread running here. Yes, that has been said, of course. Aline says, hi, Anthony, well done. That is my name in Old Irish, first spoken over 1400 years ago in Ireland, which means Alan, son of the poet. Of course. Thank you, Alan. Anne-Marie Fitzgerald says, Banachty Nafela from Dingle. Hello, Anne Marie, you're very welcome. Sorry. Margaret Crotty says, happy solstice to you also. Orwina Blog says, happy summer solstice. Indeed. Yes, Paul, the planets, Jupiter and Saturn, have already set. They set at around 7 o'clock tonight. So our opportunity has gone, but sure, look, we did see them as they approached closest. The artists in the are amazing in the community. So very talented, said Nora. Yes, they are, very much so. Tina Trana says, much love to a happy solstice from Moscow, Idaho. We have an overcast day. Looking forward to videos of the coolness from other places. Looks like overcast is a theme. Kelly McKelly says, whoops, is it Monday? Yes, indeed it is. Welcome along. And I'm hoping that we're nearly finished with the introductions. Deborah, no, I mean, I don't mind doing them, but it's 25 minutes and we're still talking. We haven't started talking about Newgrange yet. Deborah Dalzell Murphy says, blessed solstice to all from the Chicago area. Get to check in live today. Always a pleasure to welcome another Murphy in the house. Kimberly Halligan says, happy solstice to everyone. Yes. Is it still considered winter solstice in Southern Hemisphere? No, it's summer solstice in Southern Hemisphere. Shannon Donahue says, happy solstice from Haines, Alaska. Looking forward to the return of the light. Well, a very good morning to you, Shannon. Movanway says 6:37 p.m. on Monday was the closest day time. Yes. Andras says, happy solstice from Sutton, Courtenay. Hello, Andras. You're welcome along. Happy solstice to you. Okay, and very quickly on YouTube, just to see if I missed anyone. Oh my goodness me. Oh. It's going to be a long episode tonight, folks. I don't mind hanging around if you don't. This is great fun. So many people. Carol Lee is in North Dublin and says, cheers to all, happy solstice. Yes, to you also. Laurie Flynn says, I see you, good stuff. A few people saying we can see you. That's great. Falcon Kerry says, hello from the kingdom. Up the kingdom. Hello to you. A happy solstice. Stephen Brown wants to know, will we ever see the Airbus A380 in Dublin Airport when the new runway is built? I'm not sure if the new runway is any longer than... Is 28 right going to be any longer than 28 left? We'll see. Be nice, wouldn't it? Sure, they're scrapping them all now. What a terrible waste. Saoirse is helping Stephen with explaining why you couldn't see a picture. Hello, Anthony. Hello, Daisy. Hello, Mandy. Hello, Database. Hello, Arcastronomy. Blessings from Alameda, California. And that's from Mes Marion. Hello, Mes Marion. Apparently, Jackie says FB glitched, so she's now on YouTube as well. Sorry about that. Enda Riley says happy solstice from Detroit in Michigan. Hello, and happy solstice to you. Morrigan Ni Borshak says Bandia Giev. For some reason, I cannot comment on the FB stream. Glitches in the matrix. Technology. Office Care 36. The Woodsies in Monaster Boyce. Say hi, all. Hope all are good. Happy Bon Jovi Day. Happy solstice. Happy, Davik _89666 is in Athlone. Hello, Davik. Happy solstice to you. Dara Kiernan is giving us blessings of the solstice. And he was at Douth today, and it was very special. I'm sure it was, because I'd say it was, I wouldn't say there were many around. A misty, damp Douth today. Anyone else that I'm missing? Starlight Spell Singer says, so glad to be here. Really excited for this. Hello, Starlight. Happy solstice. Is it Joya Dior or Joya Dior? Says happy solstice, everyone. It's been quite cloudy here in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Yeah, it seems to be cloudy all over the world today for the conjunction. Austin Davies is in St. Helens and says greetings on the solstice. Hello, Austin. Happy solstice. Alistair McKinnon says, phew. Just made it. Arthur 4613 says, how can the spinning ball circling around the sun in ever-expanding universe be compared to great structure in Newgrange, where sun ray always comes in through the hole at the solstice day? I'm inclined to agree with you. Hibernia63 says, hello from the Czech Republic. I'm delighted to get to the live to wish the clan and you, Anthony, a very Merry Christmas and a happy solstice. Thanks for keeping me in touch with home. I miss Ireland. A very happy solstice and Christmas to you, Hibernia63. Arthur is in Poland. Elena says, hello, good evening all. Hello, Elena. Happy solstice. Okay, Sumacia says, clear in California. Facebook working here. Happy solstice. Brilliant. Okay, let's leave it at that. 30 and a half. That's unbelievable, isn't it? Very quickly, so I'll get through the announcements very quickly. I will, when I think of what they are. So the good news is that next week's episode, which will be episode 131, in next week's episode, I will be joined by our good friend, Morgan Daimler, and we have confirmed the arrangement. I did mention it last week that she was going to come on. She's going to be talking about her brand new complete translation into English of Cot Moitura, the Second Battle of Moitura, a very, very challenging piece of work because even the greatest scholars of the past failed to translate the whole thing because the language is so obscure. Morgan has had a very brave try at it, and she will explain what was involved. So she will join us next week, where we probably won't be talking about the F word like we were the last time. Paul Gowron has been pestering me. I mean, cajoling me, as a friend does. I have asked Eddie Lenihan if he will participate in an episode. Because of the time of year and because things are extremely busy, Eddie hasn't responded yet, but I am hopeful of a positive response, and fingers crossed we will get to talk to Eddie in a forthcoming episode in perhaps the next few weeks, if all goes well. But next week we will have Morgan Daimler, and we're very glad to have her along. I do have a joke. Apparently people like my jokes. I have no idea why. What's blue and not that heavy? Light blue. And that is all you're getting in terms of jokes, because I fear if I utter another one, I will get a virtual custard pie in the face out of the phone screen. Anyway, good evening to you all. Great to have you along, and it's that time of year that's very important, or at least, look, it's important to us, but it was, of course, very important to the early ancestors in various places. We know several things relating to the people of the Neolithic in the Boyne Valley, which is where I'm going to kind of confine my talk to largely, because there were a lot of laughy faces come up there. I wonder, are they sympathetic laughs? Kaylee During is in the house, sending love and good vibes. Good stuff. Hope you will all have an incredible end of this year. A great conjunction. I'll go watch The Dark Crystal later tonight. Miriam McTira says that one was terrible, but is still showing a laughing face. Blue, you backed off, Anthony. What's red and invisible? No tomatoes. Yes. What's green and goes up and down? A gooseberry in a lift. Anyway, so where were we? Newgrange, I will take questions and prompts, by the way, because I actually didn't. I decided that I thought it would be better tonight if I didn't sort of sit reading for the whole time, and let this one come from the heart more. Paul Garron says, you actually made me laugh out loud with that. Don't encourage me. So we know several things thanks to Newgrange and the Boyne Valley. We know that first of all, a serious effort was made to construct massive monuments that were not only burial places, and not only were they some sort of ritual temples, but they were also sort of commemorative of an era. And it may have been, and this is something I've spoken about in my books, Newgrange Monument to Immortality, and in Mythical Ireland, New Light on the Ancient Past. that I felt that, it may have been possible that these were people who could see their end, that there were changes afoot in the world. Perhaps they had heard of the beaker culture. Perhaps they had heard of the introduction of metallurgy. The weather was deteriorating in the Neolithic, apparently. It was becoming harder to be a farmer. And I think that there's an aspect of them wanting to memorialize and immortalize themselves through these great stone structures that were indeed to last. I wonder if they were here today. I think that was something Claire Tuffy said on this morning's live stream from Newgrange, that I wonder if they were here today, how impressed they would be that the structures have survived. Now, survived with damage, of course, into the 20th century, but thankfully that damage not too severe when one considers the fate of other very large monuments such as Ireland's Stonehenge. People are saying Facebook is glitching. Perhaps that's a protest at my terrible jokes, and perhaps I should desist from telling such jokes, because clearly that is upsetting the electrons passing through the phone and the bits of data passing through the ether. So yeah, that's probably a message. So Newgrange became famous after the late 1960s, when 6,732 members just left the community, says Paul. Who blamed them? Newgrange became famous in the late 1960s after the restoration of the passage and the roof box by Professor O'Kelly. And he became the first human being in modern history. Aaron says it's very glitchy. No F words, please. He became the first human in modern history to witness the solstice sun shining into the monument. There is some dispute among archaeologists as to whether the monument was really sealed up since the early Bronze Age and that it was off bounds for 4,000 years, or whether there had been entry to the monument in, for instance, the Iron Age. And we know that some visitors from abroad came during the early centuries AD, because there are Roman coins from that era which were found, left as offerings, presumably, on the monument. It's not that Newgrange wasn't in the consciousness of people before then. It's just that it has attracted, since its restoration, a sort of international fame that wasn't there previously. In fact, before the excavations began in 1962, Newgrange was overgrown with grass and bushes and trees, and cattle regularly grazed on it. And it looked like a forlorn shadow of its former self. There is some debate and discussion around the the roof box feature. Only thing I will say about that is that any of the archaeologists and the experts who have seen the O'Kelly archive, the drawings and the photographs, are pretty convinced that it is a faithful rendering of what was there. And in fact, very little, if any, changes were made to the roof box structure itself. But the roof box is unique because it is the feature that allows the light to actually enter the chamber, because the light that shines through the doorway only reaches about halfway up the passageway, whereas the light from the roof box enters the chamber. Now, thanks to the OPW, and maybe somebody will share the link, this year, because of COVID-19, the chamber has been off bounds since early March. It hasn't been open to the public since then, although access to the monument has at times been facilitated depending on the seriousness of the lockdown. And the OPW did what would have to be considered the only sort of sensible and practical approach, which was to live stream the solstice, which is a brilliant idea, because 20 people get to go in there on the solstice mornings, and if they see the sunshine, brilliant for them. If they don't, because it's cloudy, they don't. But all of the other hundreds of people gathered outside, and of course the many hundreds of thousands of people around the world who would like to see it, don't get to see it. So the live stream changed that, and we got to see it not directly as it were, but through the lenses of cameras. I think it was a lovely idea, and it worked out very well yesterday. Today was completely cloudy. Don't forget to tune in again tomorrow for the last of the 3 mornings of live streams from Newgrange. Claire Tuffy, who's the manager for the OPW of the monument, and Frank Prendergast, who is an archaeoastronomer, who I think we've given mention to in previous episodes of Live Irish Myths, will both be speaking about various aspects of the monument and the alignment, etc., etc. Lovely to hear Claire mentioning today that a flock of whooper swans passed over earlier before the broadcast had begun. And indeed, Paul tells me that a similar experience was had somewhere else in the Boyne Valley today. Glad to hear that Angus and Care are making their presence felt today still in the Boyne Valley. So anyway, Professor O'Kelly, who excavated Newgrange starting in 1962 and winding up in the mid-1970s, was the leading archaeologist of the time. We did an episode of Live Irish Myths about the reconstruction and the excavation, just in case you're kind of being taken in a little bit by the conspiracy theories. And I do say that because there's an awful lot of criticism, but in my view, not a lot of it's valid. You know, you should be careful not to get sucked into it too much. Just because the tomb, as it's presented to us today, has a modern look. I'm just going to find that episode, and that is episode 80, and it's called The Excavation and Restoration of Newgrange. So I'll just share that link with you in case you want to watch that later. But yeah, don't get too sort of caught up in that whole idea. The fact of the matter is that there was a very considerate and a very professional excavation carried out, which tells us a huge amount about Newgrange that we didn't know before. Just sharing that link with you guys. So if you're interested in finding out more, probably the single best book in terms of the monument and the structure of the monument and the decoration of the stones and the excavation and restoration is the man himself, Professor Michael O'Kelly's account of the excavations, and that can be found in his book, Newgrange Archaeology, Art and Legend, which we've mentioned on plenty of episodes in the past. The great tragedy about the story of the excavation and restoration of Newgrange is that this was O'Kelly's only real go at recording the thing in publication, because he passed away in 1982. Now, Professor George Ogan began excavations at Knowth in 1962, the same year as O'Kelly's excavations began at Newgrange. And George is still alive, and the 7th volume of Knowth books is being published in 2021. A huge amount of material has been published about Knowth. I have no doubt that if Professor O'Kelly had lived longer, he would have published more. And that's one of the things that's been leveled at him in terms of criticism, that this excavation report is flawed because it's not detailed enough. It's not an excavation report. It's one book trying to summarize the whole thing. More work undoubtedly would have followed. But unfortunately, as I say, the poor man passed away. Anyway, so we need to speak a little bit about the fact that pre-excavation people were pointing out things about Newgrange. And somebody, Helena, has just shared the link to the live stream. Thank you for that. Before the excavations, folklore and mythology had a fair amount to say about the monument and about seemingly obscure aspects of the monument. So, for instance, local people were apparently telling O'Kelly that the sun shines into the chamber of Newgrange on one day a year, and he thought perhaps they had been conflating Newgrange with Stonehenge. There are several people who had written. Sir Norman Lockyer in the early 1900s had speculated that because Newgrange's passage was facing southeast, that it may be solstitially aligned. Evans Vence, isn't it, in fairy faith in the Celtic countries had proposed that Newgrange was solstitially aligned. George William Russell's A Dream of Angus Og, which we have read on a previous episode, can't remember which one, it might have been one of the Newgrange episodes, appears in 1897 when A Dream of Angus Og was written, appears to have had some sort of wonderfully vivid premonition, or maybe psychic vision, or maybe a view back into the past, because he describes in very poetic and descriptive language what appears to be the winter solstice light flooding the chamber of Newgrange at a time pre-excavation, when the roof box was stuffed up full, and when the passage roof stones had subsided under the weight of the cairn, and when the light basically couldn't reach the chamber. Now, it has been pointed out, I think, by archaeologist Robert Hensey in his book Newgrange First Light. Robert points out that, you know, sunlight through the main doorway would have been seen to stretch up a certain distance up the passageway at winter solstice. So perhaps that's where the folklore came from. But you know me, and you know how I feel about this. I think if you've been watching and listening long enough and reading, you know that I'm a persistent bugger, and that I happen to believe that the mythology and the folklore are very, very powerful remembrances of something really, really very ancient. And I will give you some examples of that. But before I do, I should also speak about Joseph Campbell, who in the Masks of is it the Mask or the Masks of God? The Mask of God, Primitive Mythology, written in 1959. Had heard a story in the vicinity of Newgrange. Nobody knows the source of this story, unfortunately. I wonder, was he chatting to somebody there, or did he read it somewhere? If he read it somewhere, I've never seen the source. But he said that somebody told him that the light of Venus, the morning star, could be seen to shine into the chamber of Newgrange on one day every 8 years. And of course, that is astronomically factual. Again, that's the sort of thing that could have been spoken about and entered folklore. It doesn't necessarily mean that it was carried through the centuries and millennia by folklore. I know that it doesn't. However, we've a little bit of a difficulty when we go back to the medieval period and we see the mythology of Newgrange been written down. So, for instance, the stories of the Gawal in Shida, the taking or the distribution of the She or the mounds, the otherworld mounds. Tochmark Etain, the wooing of Etain, Ashlinga Anguso, the dream vision of Angus, and of course the Dunchanicus, which is very, very valuable. And the Dunchanicus appears in different forms in different manuscripts. But there is reference, for instance, in the Dunchanicus, and I've made quite a bit of this, is that if you're skeptical about the whole thing about mythology, then there are certain aspects of the mythology that are difficult to explain otherwise. So, for instance, one of the things that was said in 1960, and this is reported in Glyn Daniel and Sean P. O'Riordan's book on Newgrange, one of the things that was reported at the time locally was that the monument was once covered in white quartz. Now, although Ken Williams tells me pre-excavation a certain amount of quartz would have been visible, it's clear from looking at the pictures of Newgrange from the pre-excavation era that there, in fact, wasn't very much quartz visible. Not enough for one to speculate that the entire thing was once covered in white quartz. It was only during the excavations that a significant amount of quartz was found under the material that had slipped off the cairn. And this is quartz that was completely hidden for a long, long period of time. In fact, the archaeologists say that the collapse of the cairn, where the loose cairn stones rolled out over the edge and covered the curbstones and the entrance, occurred about 4,000 years ago, maybe around 500 years after Newgrange was built. So you have difficulty explaining that and squaring the circle, as it were. With regards to what archaeologists are saying about the archaeological evidence, but at the same time, there was a tendency, certainly in previous times, to poo-poo or dismiss at one's peril, of course, the folk beliefs and the mythology of the site. As I said, the idea that it was once covered in white quartz is actually mentioned in a couple of tracts of mythology, where Newgrange is described as yonder brew with the many checkered lights. It's also described as the white-topped brew, which would suggest, again, a monument that was covered with white stones. Most impressive of all, in my view, is the Dunchanicus tract, in which the Dagda, who is the chief deity and also a solar deity because he controls the crops and the harvest and the weather, he longs after Bowen, and Bowen is the goddess of the Boyne Valley, and she lives at Newgrange with her husband Elkmar. And Elkmar, in some strains of mythology, is the one who owns Newgrange. In some strains, it's Dagda. For instance, in the Gaul in Shida, Dagda owns Newgrange and is tricked out of ownership of it by his son Angus, who asks him for it for a night and a day. And I think we've told that story several times ad nauseum at this stage. In fact, so much so that I'm pretty sure you guys know that story off by heart at this point. In the Dunchanicus, Dagda wishes to lie with Bowen. Basically, he sends Alkmaar off on an errand and is seen to control time in a very dramatic way, because Alkmaar thinks that he's only going away for a day, when in fact he's going away for 9 months. And during that time, Dagda and Bowen lie together and conceive the child Angus Og, who at the end of the single day that is actually 9 months is whisked away to fosterage in secrecy to Midger at Brelay. Oh, sorry, that's Tuthmark Etain. But the Dunchanicus version concurs with that. And there's a very specific reference to Dagda entering the house of Elkmar and the sun standing still in the sky. And this standing still of the sun is also seen in the mythology of Douth, where one encounters the king Bresal Bodibad, whose sister casts a magic spell on the sun to make it stand still in the heavens, so that the men, it doesn't mention women, the men who are brought there by the king to build the monument can have endless day for the task. But when the king and his sister commit incest, note incest has come up as a big theme this year in Newgrange, because they found a skull of a man who was buried there who was the product of a first-degree incestuous relationship. That the spell was broken and darkness came upon Douth. And here we have sort of a similar idea at Newgrange. What is the standing still sun? That is the solstice, because that's what solstice means. It's Latin, isn't it? Or is it Greek? It's Latin, I think. Sol sistere, which means the standing still sun. We call it the Greenstad, which literally means stopped sun. So the sun is rising, and its rising position is moving up and down along the horizon. One thinks of the giant pendulum swing that I've mentioned on many episodes, and it slows down and stops at the solstices, but it's swinging fastest in the center at the equinoxes, when it's rising in the east and setting in the west, and then it slows down again and stops at winter solstice. The sun was standing still when Dagda, the sun god, entered the house of Elkmar to conceive the child with Bowen. What we see there is fertility, sort of a sacred sexual symbolism, in that the sky god is seen to be mating with the womb of the earth in the form of Sheed Broga or Brunabonia. Brew being apparently derived from brug, meaning mansion or abode, but brew also, oddly enough, being a word meaning womb. And I've spoken about the birth of the miraculous son, Angus Og, was so called, Angus, the youthful son, or the son of the young, so called because young is the son who was conceived at the beginning of the day and born between that and the evening of the same day. And so one cannot approach Newgrange and its mysteries and its mythology without having, at the very least, that feeling that some of the information that we've gleaned from mythology actually pertains to the monument and its functions, and therefore comes to us across long distances of time. Now, there are skeptics and there are people who are very, not skeptical, dismissive, actually. Some of them scholarly, who will say, no, 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 no. There's no way. There's no way that information could survive language changes. Well, I would say we've had a language change in the past 2 centuries. 3 or 4 generations ago, our great grandparents and our great great grandparents were speaking Irish, and now we're speaking English. We're still talking about the stories of Newgrange. We're speaking about them in a different language. I don't think that argument really cuts the mustard, to be honest with you. Most fascinating of all is the idea that in the mythology of Newgrange, we see what John Carey, the medieval scholar, refers to as a particular concern with the dilation of or control of time, in a way that the king and his sister at Douth are able to make time stand still for there to be endless day, in a way where at Newgrange, Dagda is able to cast a spell so that Elkmar thinks, I'm going away for a day on a message or an errand, but in fact, Dagda is compressing 9 months into the space of one day. So this idea of the control of time is very interesting, because we know both monuments, and I'm talking about Douth and Newgrange, have alignments on the solstice. Now, the Douth mythology pertains to summer solstice, which is interesting because it may be that there's another undiscovered passageway and chamber aligned to summer sunrise somewhere under the bulk of that monument, which hasn't been thoroughly excavated in modern times, although a seriously botched job was done in the 1840s by R.H. Frith and his colleagues, previously mentioned in several episodes. So we have solstice alignments at both monuments. And apparently the fact that the mythology concerns, time and the movement of the sun is irrelevant to that. How can a scholar say it's irrelevant? So there's one prominent scholar said this year that the Douth legend about the king and his sister is based explicitly on the story of the Tower of Babylon from Genesis in the Old Testament. Well, you see, we spoke about the influence of the ecclesiastical scribes on the material that they had to write down. But that doesn't mean that the material that they wrote down was entirely fabricated by them at that time. It just means it was influenced by them. I think it was Yvette or Aaron. Aaron Durrett makes a very, very interesting, or asks a very interesting question. Why do Europeans doubt their indigenous heritage? All indigenous people believe in the wisdom of their ancestral stories and treasure them. Exactly, Aaron, exactly. Thank you for that. Well, what I would say about Newgrange is that I think there's enough in the mythology to at least raise suspicions that, look, if you see repeated references to the sun and time and seasons and control of crops, etc., one has to begin to wonder that if this mythology does not stem from the time when these great monuments were built, apparently in appeasement of sky gods, or as a way of perhaps, I suggest in my book Mythical Ireland that because the climate was becoming more challenging in the Neolithic, that perhaps it was that the people who built these monuments, the reason that Newgrange, Douth and Douth are bigger and grander and more ostentatious than anything we've seen before, is because they were desperately trying to appease gods who maybe had fallen out of favor with them. Perhaps they were capricious in nature, as is the God of the Abrahamic religions. Well, I can speak for Christianity, especially, where the God of Christianity is excessively capricious. And what is the first commandment? People who don't know their Bible used to say, "Thou shalt not kill." Surely, no, it's not. You shall have no other gods before me. So perhaps the gods in the minds of the builders were capricious and jealous as well. Who knows? Who knows? One thing that we can extrapolate from the mythology is that there was a pantheon rather than a monotheistic vision at some time in the past. All of this stuff was written down less than a millennium ago, and we're talking about a structure that's more than 5 millennia old, so who can tell? And of course, that's the bottom line with Newgrange and its mythology. We can't tell for sure, whether that mythology goes back any further than the Christian scribes who wrote it down, because we've literally no way of proving it. We can build a substantial case, a case built on substantial evidence. We can build, and we can speculate and postulate and conjecture. Of course, we can do that. Can we say definitively one way or the other? Absolutely not. By all means, buy my books, and by all means, read them from cover to cover. But don't expect to find the absolute truth in there, because I only offer answers. And in fact, I ask more questions than I answer, is the honest truth. Somebody asked a while back, where did the quartz of Newgrange come from? It is reckoned that the quartz came from the Wicklow Mountains because the geologists say it has a particular makeup which makes it very similar. In recent years, however, and only in the past decade, another geologist whose name is George, I think it's Sevastopoulos or something like that. I apologize if I pronounce the name wrong. He is based, is it in UCD or in Trinity? I can't remember. He's based in one of the universities in Dublin. He has proposed that the Rockabill Islands are the source of the Newgrange quartz, or at least that they could be, and that requires further examination. Now, that makes perfect sense to me, because at the entrance to the Boyne Valley, we have the Beltray standing stones. We discussed those in an episode of Live Irish Myths. And they have a winter solstice sunrise alignment, just like Newgrange. They're made of grey wacky, just like the stones of Newgrange. They were probably fetched by the builders from Clogherhead, the same source as the grey wacky of Newgrange, and in fact may have acted as a sort of a navigational marker on the coastline, where the sea ends and the river begins, or if you're coming the other way, where the river ends and the sea begins. So if you're navigating, and we know these people navigated, for God's sake, they're the only way that they could access the monuments and bring materials there was by river. It's crazy. It's incredulous. It is preposterous to suggest that they brought 5-ton and 10-ton blocks of stone across land, across ditches and through bogs and all that sort of stuff. Far easier for them to bring them by boat. Sorry, I shouldn't be so excessive in my language, because it's still a possibility. You couldn't rule out that some of them didn't come by land. And so you have Beltray with its solstice alignment. And where does the sun rise at the winter solstice viewed from the Beltray standing stones, except for over Rockabill? So if you consider that Beltray is the first monument that you meet coming in off the sea into the Boyne Valley, I think it's Neolithic in date, by the way, which would go against the convention among archaeologists that holds that standing stones are generally Bronze Age in date. I think it's Neolithic. I think the astronomy proves that, although it's not copper fastened proof in any way. It's not absolute definitive proof. But even the stories at Beltray are fascinating. You know, for instance, the story about Balor stealing the Glasgovan, the magic cow, and her calf from Ulster and bringing her down along the coast, and that all went well until they crossed the Boyne, when the calf fell behind the cow. Yes, and the cow looked back to see where the calf was and saw that she was miles and miles from home, that they'd been walking away from Ulster down into Leinster. And the cow let out a big scream, and at that Balor opened his giant single eye and his giant eyelid, which he used to need help to open. And there's a very baleful aspect of Balor, which is that as he opens his eyes in various phases, the earth gets burned and scorched. And so he opens his eye to see what's going on and petrifies or burns to a rock the cow and the calf, which form the Rockabill Islands. And of course, the Cow Island is the larger one to the south with the lighthouse on it, and the Calf Island to the north is the one which represents the calf that had looked back, or that had, you know, fallen behind the cow. Fascinating cosmology inherent in the stories. And that's also supposed to be the location where Cuchulain's only son, Connla, came ashore. And Cuchulainn fought him to the death, not realizing that it was his son. And so you have stories that again appear to back up the astronomy. I don't know how many of you have actually been inside Newgrange, and I especially don't know how many of you, or how few of you, have been inside Newgrange on the solstice to see the sunlight. I have. I'm lucky that I have seen the sun in the chamber at Newgrange. It is a very moving event. It is a strangely evocative experience. Now, you know me, I have a spiritual bent, and there's a certain emotion and poetry in my work. So I am inclined towards that kind of thing. But even people who are very sort of perhaps clinical and empirical in their outlook, and perhaps not emotional and poetic and not spiritual, find it a spiritual and uplifting and almost a religious experience. Joe Monks is in the house, as is Colin Beresford. O'Connor Udell says hi from Connecticut. Hello to you both, and good evening. Good to see you, Joe. Claire Tuffy, who has been probably in the chamber of Newgrange witnessing the solstice more than any human being who's ever been alive, and that would include in the Neolithic period, because I think Claire has been in charge there for 30 years or so, and would be in there with the lottery winners every winter on at least one or two of the days. And Claire would often have referred to the fact that, it changes people. It's a funny thing, and it occupies a chapter of my book, Newgrange Monument Immortality, the emotional impact of seeing the light. Actually, I should read. I really should, shouldn't I? I did say I didn't want to read extensive passages because it's better when we just talk. But I wrote a chapter. I think it's called Inside the Chamber of Light. And at the time, I petitioned people online and by email to give me their stories. If you've been in Newgrange for the solstice and you've seen it, what effect did it have on you? So I'll just read out a couple of snippets of the account. I see you made the BBC, Anthony. That's Henry. Was that the picture of Newgrange with Jupiter and Saturn over it? Yeah. Was that Barra Best on the weather? Dolores Whelan, who some of you will know, is the author of Ever Ancient, Ever New, and is a practitioner of Celtic spirituality based in County Louth, not too far from where Patricia McAteer lives, actually. Says that she had a significant experience in the chamber at winter solstice in 1986. Never having been to Newgrange before, I was very excited and went with a huge sense of anticipation. Of course, I have to say, Dolores is a friend of mine, and I know Dolores would be predisposed towards the spiritual. And there are others who perhaps would be less so. That morning, I had the privilege of being present when the sun entered the central chamber, or womb, and I was allowed to take part in a 5,000-year-old ritual. I was completely overwhelmed and awed by the experience, and knew that something significant had happened. Although at that time I did not have the conscious awareness or the language to fully express what had taken place, some part of me knew that a doorway had been activated or opened, which is extraordinary because that is the imagery of Sheedan Broga. That's what a she is. It's a liminal portal between worlds, between realms. Are they realms of, in terms of this world and another world, are they realms of consciousness? Are they spiritual realms? Who knows? Maggie MacDonald says there was a sense of endless time inside the tomb. The entire world outside seemed not to exist. I felt overwhelmed by a sense of being born again in a very strange way. And I felt extremely vulnerable and awed. It was almost as though we were inside some kind of time capsule. And when we finally emerged from the inside, pulling tarpaulin sheets aside and avoiding the supporting structures of the restoration, I was actually disappointed to find myself back in the real world again. I actually found myself wishing I could travel back thousands of years and leave the world I had been born into behind. The entire experience for me was almost a spiritual one, and stories of Messiah figures laid in tombs and rising again was very prominent and whirling in my mind as I tried to clarify and process my feelings and thoughts. Inside the tomb was, for me, a place where death and life meet in the most highly symbolic way, and yes, the experience had a deeply long-lasting effect on me. So much so that I have spent many years visiting the ancient sites and tombs of Era in an effort to establish both an understanding and connection to those who have walked this island before me and who knew the skies as well as themselves. Artist Jeremiah Keogh had the following to say: "As I entered the chamber, I felt very heavy, as if I was walking through thick bog up to my knees, and I had to put my hands on the wall of the chamber to support myself along the passageway. As I reached the inner chamber, I felt relieved and elated. My mind took off on a wonderful flight of imagination. It was like stepping back from the visible to the invisible worlds of ancient realms, and all the stories of Irish mythology that I had listened to as a child came flooding back into my mind in psychedelic pictures. I felt an amazing thirst, both physically and mentally, and the experience opened up a whole new way for me to capture a dreamlike quality in my paintings. After this experience, I went on to paint a series of Irish mythological stories." My own words here are that not all those who visit Newgrange, either on the solstice or afterwards, experience any profound spiritual episode or rebirth, but many come away with a feeling many come away feeling a sense of connection with something arcane, something ancient, something liminal. A friend of mine, Martin Dyer, he used to be an archaeologist, recalls being in the chamber on the solstice a number of years ago, before the introduction of the lottery system. It was cloudy outside, and there seemed little chance of anything happening. And while huddling with the group inside the darkness of the interior, the light suddenly burst forth. The sun had found a gap in the clouds, and these are Martin's words. "Suddenly, the sunlight was on the floor of the chamber, fully formed, a vivid orange light with a radiance that bathed the entire chamber and the people in an exquisite, soft, golden light. The guide said that if anyone wanted to place anything into the beam, they were free to do so. With that, the tension was broken, and everyone started rooting in pockets, and promptly several crystals were being illuminated, along with wedding rings, a special poetry book, and a photo of a loved one. People's hands hovered in this holy of holies. They were dipping their hands into the light beam with a reverential tenderness. There was a silence, an electric atmosphere, and a palpable sense of the sacred. A sense that the spirits of those who had orchestrated the experience thousands of years ago were somehow basking in pure delight. There was a sense of arrival, fulfillment, completeness, and joy close to tears." Powerful stuff. Fantastic. Yeah, really, really powerful. And so that's the kind of experience that people have in Newgrange on the solstice. It's a, it's okay. Look, let's be honest. The poet and the spiritual person is inclined to see it that way. You know, there was a famous Taoiseach, I think he was Taoiseach at the time, Michael McDowell, of the, I think he was Progressive Democrats. We're going back between 15 and 20 years ago, who famously emerged from Newgrange, having been in there on the solstice, and said, you know, it's the sun shining into a stone corridor, big deal, you know, and just completely couldn't see the significance of it. And yeah, my own feeling, having seen that, and my own feeling with anybody who has that opinion about it, is that why don't you give your bloody place to somebody else who will appreciate it? You know, like it's a little bit disingenuous, but I think if you're so cynical that that's the way you see it, then you're better off staying outside. You'll never appreciate it, you know. I want to read the section from Glyn Daniel and O'Riordan's book about Newgrange, about this calendar in 1960 that contained interesting information about Newgrange. A coloured calendar current in Ireland in 1960 had in it a good photograph of the decorated stone at the entrance to Newgrange. This was accompanied by an account which needs quoting almost in toto as an example of the jumble of nonsense and wishful thinking indulged in by those who prefer the pleasures of the irrational and the joys of unreason to the hard thinking that archaeology demands. The entrance in the east was originally triangular, says the description, but is now changed for easy entrance. Formerly, it was necessary to crawl in, and progress was retarded by interference, stones compelling the neophyte to stoop and stumble. That's not actually too far from the truth. The rays of the rising sun at certain times of the year penetrate the opening and rest on a remarkable triple spiral carving in the central chamber. Remember, folks, this is 1960. This is 2 years before the excavations began, and 7 years before O'Kelly witnessed the sun in the chamber. In 1960, it was not possible to see the sun in the chamber. Now, it doesn't directly strike the triple spiral in the chamber, but it lights it by reflected light, something captured in a beautiful photograph by my good friend Ken Williams, who was in on one of the solstice days last year with his camera. And you can see in my photo of the simulation, I have lit the triple spiral with a torch. But in his photo, I believe it's just sort of the ambient light from the sun. Fantastic stuff. Like the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt, the Newgrange temple was originally covered with a layer of white quartz and was a brilliant object of light for a considerable distance. Nuda, N-U-D-A, which is a variant of Nuada, which is another name for Alkmaar, the first king of the Tuatha Dé Danann in Ireland, and his master magician are said to have officiated here in the very, very old days. And I go on to say that two very important statements in that 1960 calendar demonstrate that there were enduring traditions about Newgrange that were fascinating and even compelling, and certainly worthy of at least some investigation. One, that the sun shone into the chamber during the year, and the other, that the monument may once have been covered in white quartz. Understandably, Daniel could not have known about the existence of quartz, given that the O'Kelly excavations at Newgrange had just begun when the Daniel/O'Riordan book was published. But there was at least one possible reference to this feature in mythology. The white-topped brew was said to have been brilliant to approach. Furthermore, he was doubtless aware that the westernmost of the hills of Lough Crew, with its smattering of chambered cairns, was Cairn Bawn, meaning the white cairn. If he'd been a bit more familiar with some of the mythology of Newgrange, he might not have been so quick to dismiss it. And so there was a tendency, certainly in former times, to be dismissive of the mythology. And as Aaron says, what is it about Europeans that we're so dismissive? Why is it that it seems that we actually want to believe that the Christian monks invented a whole mythology for us? I've written, as you know, about another story pertaining to Newgrange, which is the story of the destruction of the monster, the Mata, who was said to have been dismembered and its bits thrown limb by limb into the Boyne. But it was dismembered at a mysterious stone at Newgrange called the Lech Ben, which can mean the horned stone or the peak stone, which I believe was formerly the standing stone on top of Newgrange, which unfortunately was removed sometime in the 18th or 19th century and was not there when the O'Kelly excavations began, which is a terrible shame. But I was very interested, first of all, in the work of Philip Freund. I think I've probably said this before too, in terms of comparative creation mythology, and there are 5 major themes of creation myth. Hello, Paula. You're welcome along. In world mythology, there are 5 major creation myth themes. One of those is the destruction of the monster. And what's his name? He's very controversial. Vence, isn't it? Witzel, I should say. Michael Witzel, in his The Origins of the World's Mythologies, proposes a 2-tier structure of mythology, which has been suggested by some academics to be quite a racist theory. However, he points out that these stories pertaining to monsters being destroyed are in some cases up to 20,000 years old. And it would appear to me that the description in the Dunchanicus of the Mata licking up the Boyne so that it becomes a dry river valley is perhaps, could we dare to speculate that it is perhaps a memory of the glaciers which were said to have formed the Boyne Valley back in the Ice Age. So we're going back, what, 12,000 years or so. Could we dare to suggest it? Well, if you go to other parts of the world, such as Australia, there are indigenous myths there pertaining to geographic features, uh, such as mountains that were once part of the mainland, but which are now islands out in the ocean because of the rise in the oceans and the tectonic forces that have changed the landscape over tens of thousands of years. And apparently, in some cases, there are remembrances of archaeological features, or sorry, geological features that are like 60 or 70,000 years old. Unfortunately, I can't quote the exact instance, but I'm sure some of my viewers will be able to do so. So it's no wonder then that Newgrange has this numinous function and has this transcendent appeal because first of all, it is described in its name as a she being an F-word mound. That's a very poor and inadequate translation of the word she. And I've often said, again, to the point of ad nauseum, I've often said that the word she does not have an adequate translation into English, but that the idea of a she being a portal between worlds, a liminal place, a liminal space, is probably the closest that we can come to what is actually a reasonably abstract concept. Just like the art that decorates yeah, sorry, Paula. Yeah, I have to be careful because every time I actually say the F word, and we're not talking about feck, we're talking about those little wonderful good people, creatures, beings. Because every time we do, it seems to cause technological mayhem. I don't know how we're going to get through a whole episode with Eddie Lenahan, whose area of expertise happens to be F words. I don't know how that's going to be achieved. Yeah, and I can't even remember what I was going to say because I got sidetracked. Yeah. No wonder then, as I say, that Newgrange has that transcendent function and that numinous aspect, given that the whole idea is abstract in the first place. Somebody asked earlier on, can I explain the triple spirals? Like, I can give you theories, but that's all they are. And at the end of the day, it's difficult. It's nigh on impossible to give you a definitive description of them. First of all, primarily because they are abstract, and because the people who carved them are dead, long dead, and because they didn't leave us any manual. I've said that before. They didn't leave us an instruction book. This is what the spiral means. They weren't writing language; they were writing symbols. And if you've read Jung's work on symbols, well, there's a reason that symbols are abstract. They appeal to the intuitive aspect of us, not the rational. So you're not supposed to approach the entrance curbstone, or indeed the passage and chamber of Newgrange, with you in your head in an entirely rational frame of mind, because to you will always be what I describe in Mythical Ireland in the book. You'll always be what I describe, the archaeologist with the measuring rod. You're there to measure, and you're there to quantify and describe. You're there to be empirical and to come away with facts and figures. Don't get me wrong, that has merit and it is fascinating. And the archaeologists have told us more about the people who built these monuments than anybody. However, you must also be willing, in order to appreciate it and to understand it better, you must also be willing to approach it as the poetic neophyte, the spiritual pilgrim, the one who is coming without any preconditions, the one who's not necessarily looking for all of the rational answers of the place. And then it will speak to you in a language that is abstract. It's not. It is not the place of archaeologists. They do not hold a premium over the complete dissection or the complete interpretation of Newgrange and the great monuments of Brú na Bóinne. However, it does not also fall upon someone like me to dare indulge my ego by suggesting that I have the answers either. But what I've said, and I've written this again in Newgrange Monument Immortality and in Mythical Ireland New Light on the Ancient Past, is that when one approaches with that open mind and open heart, when one is willing to approach it both as an archaeologist of the earth and an archaeologist of the soul, and an archaeologist of the mind and an archaeologist of the spirit, then one is inclined to see a broader vista, perhaps the sort of vista that was envisioned by those who created it in the first place. Does it have a definitive function? I don't know. Passage tomb sounds like a very functional and banal, almost laughable label, actually. It's a passage leading to a place where bones were buried. Therefore, it's a passage tomb. Patricia says, how to marry the two, Anthony Murphy. That is the critical aspect. And it's not just the two, I suppose it's the multifaceted aspects of Newgrange. So if you are inclined to numinous experience when you approach Newgrange, but also you're not at all dismissive or cynical, or that you don't hold anger about the archaeologists, which I find some of the spiritual people I've encountered often do. They lean far too far towards the abstract, and far too far, extremely so in some cases, to the intuitive. And they want to throw out the baby with the bathwater by dismissing all the archaeological evidence. And that's just not going to wash. However, there are the archaeologists, not too many of them. I have plenty of archaeologist friends, and they're all very open-minded. But there are certain archaeologists for whom the thing is an entirely empirical enterprise. And they perhaps just don't get the transcendent and numinous and spiritual function of it and aspect of it. And I kind of understand that, and I can empathize with it to a degree, but I just find that the most truthful path that must be tread on one's way to Sheedan Broga is one that encompasses all of the disciplines, or as many as possible, and all of the opinions, and one that is entirely open to possibilities. Who can tell you what the triple spiral means? I have suggested it could be related to the sun, given that the monument is apparently so focused on the sun in the mythology built by the one who we could say was the solar deity. You could also say, well, what about sun, moon, and morning star, given that they are in the firing range, as it were? They are within the target of its small slit, its aperture, its roof box, its window. Could we also look at the triplicate, or the triune, or the trinity of deities in the mythology as an indication as to what the spirals might represent? So in the early stories, Dagda, Boin, and Angus Og being the father, the sky father, or the supernatural father, the earth mother, the mother of fecundity, and the divine offspring, this miracle son who is born, conceived and born in the space of the day. Or we can think of another triune of very special people, Dechtine, who was apparently visited by Lu, Lovefather. Again, he could be another aspect of the solar deity. Lu appeared to her and said that she was pregnant. We could think of a virgin birth, as it were, and she later gives birth to Setanta, who is to become the great warrior hero Cuchulainn. So certainly two triads, as it were, two triplicate or two trinities. And we could even say, we could even speculate about the cruciform aspect of the chamber pertaining to the places where they sit in relation to each other, one at the head, one on the left side, and one on the right side in those recesses. Somebody suggested, that there's a similarity there also with the shamrock. Who knows? When Patrick was apparently trying to teach the lesson of the Trinity being part of one, he used the shamrock and pointed to its separate leaves, as it were, and one could easily do the same at Newgrange, which, by the way, is based intrinsically on the cruciform shape. The cross was wholly a sacred shape in Ireland 3.5 to 4,000 years before the arrival of Christianity in Ireland. Imagine that. Anyway, I'm perfectly happy to stay for a while. I don't. People can drop in and out as they want. But what I will do is I will take some questions, because I know there's perhaps some things that people would like to ask, and if I can answer them, I'll answer them. But of course, I would always preempt that by saying I don't have the answers. All I've been doing is exploring the monument from the viewpoint of an astronomer and somebody interested in mythology, somebody interested in archaeology and history, and somebody in search of my own soul. And that has been part of my life's journey, that I'm, searching and yearning for something inexplicable, something that doesn't have necessarily a straight answer or an easy answer. Adele Perth is in the house and says, good morning. Hello, Adele. Greetings of the winter solstice to you. Summer solstice where you are, and just nearing the end of the winter solstice for us, and we're looking forward to brighter days ahead. Justina says, lots of cultures around the world do things in threes. It seems to be a human thing. Yeah, the funny thing is that the triple spiral is only found at Newgrange. I mean, the spiral itself is ubiquitous at the Brunebonia monuments and also at Lough Crew, but it is only found in one place in Ireland, and that is at Newgrange. Sorry, now somebody else is asking questions. Aaron Durrett says, please say more about the cross in Ireland pre-Christianity. Thank you. I can't say a huge amount more, except for, Newgrange does not exist in isolation as having a cross-shaped passage. The northern of the two passages on the western side of Doubt, the two that we know of, is cruciform. It's cross-shaped. The eastern passage at Knowth is cruciform. It's the longest passage of any known passage tomb in Europe. It's twice as long as the passage at Newgrange. And also, interestingly, the passage of Cairntee at Lough Crew, which is aligned so that the sunrise on the equinoxes shines into its chamber and lights up a stone at the rear of its chamber, is also cross-shaped. What I find particularly interesting about that is when you crouch down, you can't do it now because it's locked off, it's off bounds to visitors. When you crouch down in that end recess with your back to the equinox stone and you look out through the entrance, in the distance, framed by the entrance, is the Hill of Slane. Now, the Hill of Slane became famous much later on as the place where St. Patrick lit the Paschal fire, therefore announcing in a very dramatic and symbolic way the arrival of Christianity into Ireland. However, one is inclined to think that there's something really interesting going on there with regard to the fact that the cross-shaped chamber of Cairntee, constructed possibly 3,000, somewhere between 3,000 and 3,500 years ago, is aligned towards Slane, which has prehistoric structures on it. At least one burial mound said to be the place where the Furbolg king Sláine was buried. So it's like Newgrange isn't like a one-off fluke, and there are cruciform passages in Sligo as well. So one is inclined to think that the cross was for some reason important. I have one suggestion about that, which is that it was based on the Swan and the Swan constellation, but that is hypothetical, and we will never probably be able to answer that for sure. Neil Hughes asked a question on symbols. I'm just trying to find it. I do apologize. Neil, I'm scrolling here. Are symbols not the precursor to letters and writing? A symbol such as a logo, etc., as an idea. Then we realized we could break it down to individual sounds or group of sounds. Yes, perhaps. But the curious thing about Ireland is that we don't have written language really until the arrival of the monks. And there was a limited form of written language called Ogham in, I think, the late Iron Age, which, may have been used, but it seems that we preferred to talk than to write. Something I think that is still inherent in many Irish people today. Yes, in many places, symbols are the precursor to letters and writing. However, it's the abstract nature of some of the carvings at Brunebonia. And then, of course, yeah, there are logos and symbols. Like, absolutely, there are Because at, for instance, the calendar stone, I think the crescents and the circles do represent phases of the moon. I think the serpentine feature is a counting device. I think the spiral represents the sun. So you have a good point, but who can say definitively is always the question, you know? Life, death, and rebirth, says Kelly Edmiston. Yeah, I mean, there's another idea which has been commonly expressed, is the fact that, you know, those who are on the outside are in the mortal world. Those who are being brought inside are the dead, whose bodies have been stripped and dismembered and usually cremated. And then at the solstice, something of a rebirth happens. So absolutely, that is entirely a possible vital aspect of Newgrange, that triple aspect of life, death, and rebirth. Again, we cannot prove any of this. We can only suppose it or propose it. What about the boy from the family, two of the same parents and son? Helena wants to know. Yeah, well, that was the big announcement during the summer that NG10, a bone sample found in Newgrange, which had been uncremated, because the cremation unfortunately destroys the DNA, and lots of bones in Irish Neolithic sites are cremated. Was found to be that of a male whose parents were first degree relatives, either a brother and sister, or mother and son, or father and daughter, and that's an incredible revelation that might tell us a lot about dynastic power and keeping it in the family. It may or it may not. There'll be lots more to come on that, I feel, in the future. Lara Cassidy and her colleagues are continuing to increase the database of samples. And so as we learn more, we learn more about the familial relationships that there were, because we know, for instance, that NG10 found in Newgrange was related distantly to some of those who were found in Carrowkeel and Sligo. Yeah, Coda has been surprisingly well behaved tonight. I might bring him in to say hello for a minute. Paul Garrett says quartz in Irish is Grian Cloch, sunstone. Yes, indeed. Who else is asking a question? A triple goddess, says Aaron. Yeah, I mean, the triple goddess encountered by the Milesians when they came to take Ireland from the deities, from the Tuatha De Danann, Banba, Fola, and Eru. What do you think about the idea that it was used as a sweat lodge? Well, we do have monuments that are sweat lodges, and they're much smaller, less ostentatious structures. It would seem, looking at it from the outside, it would seem, I suppose, a little bit extreme. Why would you build a monument that has 250,000 tons of material to use it as a sweat lodge? You know, one imagines that it has a greater function, a more dramatic function. You know, one cannot rule out the possibility that it was used for multiple functions. Henry Scullion says, I popped out for a few minutes, but I was saying you got credited for your picture on the BBC Northern Ireland online. Brilliant stuff. Great stuff. Is it Cygnus shaped also, says Nora? Yes. Well, the cross is the shape of the Swan constellation, and the swan naturally forms a cruciform shape when it's flying through the sky. If you look at it, you know, wings outstretched, long neck, and the little tail. So it looks like a cross shape in the sky, you know. Elaine says, Anthony, no question, but happy to report I received Island of the Setting Sun from Amazon. Finally. Brilliant stuff, Elaine. Hope you enjoy that. There'll be some solstice and Christmas reading for you. Does the cross orientate with north, south, east, west? No. The cross points, the axis of the cross, of course, at Newgrange points to the southeast, where the sun rises on winter solstice. So it's actually angled to all that by 45 degrees. No silly questions, Colleen. It's not a silly question. Don't worry. Ley lines, says Helena. No, we're not going there. I do talk about straight track alignments involving Newgrange. Some of them very interesting. I don't deal with the area of energy. I don't dowse, and I'm not an expert, so I can't. I'm not qualified to talk about it. some would say. I'm not qualified to talk about a lot of things, but it's just not an area that I have a couple of copies actually of Michael Pointer's book Pie in the Sky, and it's extremely popular with some people, but I just wouldn't have any knowledge of it. I think it sounds to me a little bit, I don't know, it just sounds like it doesn't have science behind it. That's, I think, at the end of the day, it's like, but maybe it's not supposed to have science behind it, you know? Yeah, Brendan makes a point, and this is exactly it. This is the reason I say that you can never tell. Could they be cross-shaped so that the occupants would not interfere with the sun entering the chamber while still being able to witness it? Yeah, recesses where you can stand to the side. That might seem like a good proposal, and then you consider Newgrange has basin stones in each of its recesses, which suggests that remains were possibly put into those, depository areas. So it kind of makes it less likely. And in any case, if you go to Newgrange, you can't really stand into, for instance, the right-hand recess because of the stones there, the basin stones. The end recess, the basin was smashed at one stage by a guy who dreamt that there was gold buried under it, believe it or not. Could the cruciform also be symbolic of fertility, says Movanwe? Yes. It has been suggested, and I don't know if this is answering your question, I hope it is, but it's been suggested by more than one author that the shape of Newgrange's passage and chamber is very uterine, and therefore one could see it as sort of a largely organic representation of the female. So I'm not sure if that's exactly what you're thinking, but I mean, in terms of the myth, I think that's what's kind of suggested, the sky mating with the earth. And perhaps the offspring being the miracle sun. You know, the birth, Newgrange celebrates, I always say, the birth of the new sun. And you can spell that either way, SONSUN. Okay. I have to check YouTube. Jules says, did you ask Lara Cassidy on Mythflix? I did. She is exceptionally busy, but she says she'll get back to us in the new year at some stage. She was, and I know for a fact she is literally, as the man says, up to her neck in work. So she has tentatively said yes, but just the date hasn't been decided upon. So I, like you, really look forward to that. I think that will be a fascinating episode. Triple spiral representing the 3 days the sun enters the chamber. Interesting, Adele. The only thing is we now know, and in fact they're studying it because of COVID and the lockdown. It gives, because there's no visitors, they're able to study it now. But it's known that the sun enters the chamber for about a week before and after the solstice. So it's not just 3 days, although that 3 days, you know, that somebody said earlier, the 3 days in the tomb before the resurrection, etc. You know, it's like, and I think that's in myth, but I can't specifically remember the examples where it is. Sorry, Anthony, very much like these session concha now and again instead of the reasoning sessions. Very enlightening and interactive. We learn bits from yourself and the others of the Tua Fosta. Yes, and that's the great thing. It's lovely that other people are able to contribute, you know. One Natal, Anthony, to you and your family from Patricia Wardell. Thanks, Patricia. And I think we're seem to be winding up now. I just want to make sure there's no questions on YouTube that perhaps I have missed. Dara Kiernan says the Neolithic people must have understood anatomy also if they built a tomb to represent a womb. Well, look, they absolutely did, Dara. And I'll tell you, the definitive reason for that is because in addition to the fact that the remains are disarticulated and they're fragmented, which suggests there was a processing of the dead, there's also suggestion that we had sky burial, open air burial of corpses on suspended platforms so that the birds would strip away the flesh. There's a suggestion that I've written about briefly in the Mythical Ireland book that there was somebody, the undertaker of the Neolithic, as it were, who had to dismember the body. You know, the bodies were not brought into any of these places in one piece, you know. Anthony says, Hibernia 63, you should play the game Dawn of Man, a nice little game, and you could build your own Newgrange. Sounds fascinating. Brilliant. If Dagda equals Jupiter and if Elkmar froze the sun, then could her husband be Apollo? Yeah, possibly. Apollo is mentioned by, was it, who was it that was quoting Caesar? Was it Diodorus Siculus or somebody that Caesar apparently said that, you know, I'm not sure if specifically referring to Ireland, but they worshipped the equivalent of the god Apollo. Carl wants to know if Newgrange could have had a chimney. We don't think so, and it has been suggested by a couple of scholars that, or authors at least, that the roof, the capping stone on the corbelled roof could have been removed. But the problem is that above that you have several meters of loose stones. And one of the criticisms of O'Kelly is that he didn't record the stratigraphy of the top of Newgrange, but there's no stratigraphy, as Ken Williams would have been telling me recently. There's no stratigraphy in loose layer, not even layers, in loose boulders, you know. So we don't think so. But then Douth appears to have had a very interesting 5-inch wide square shaft made of stone running from the ground up to about 17 feet. So who knows what that was for, you know. Fascinating stuff. Who else? Did I miss anything else? Carl Deegan says, I wonder what language the people spoke then. Also, what of the appearance of the chimney at Douth? I think I've said all I can say, to be honest, about the chimney at Douth in the new podcast. Did I turn that into a blog post as well that you can read rather than necessarily having to listen to? No, I didn't. But if you go through the YouTube channel, you'll find the I think it was podcast 12 was Douth the crematorium. In relation to the language, we are told that the prehistoric Irish spoke what is called Proto-Indo-European. And that Irish only arrived with the Celts. But apparently that whole theory is now slowly dissipating with the evidence. And it may be that the Irish language bedded down earlier than previously thought, perhaps in the Bronze Age. Valerie Gallagher, I don't know where you are, but Valerie says the skies are clear and the conjunction is visible. Brilliant stuff. You got more of a view than we did, but anyway, that's okay. If we were in ancient Ireland, says Irish technical thinker, Anthony would be that guy who lived in a wooden hut at the side of a mountain, and we pay him in vegetables to tell us stories. Fact. Yeah. I just for the record, I like broccoli, and I like small garden peas. I like green beans. I like celery. Not fond of carrots, so don't give me loads of carrots. Just looking for any last questions that I might have missed. Dara asks about Dectana, 10 fires. Yes, you need to read Island of the Setting Sun, Dara. I'd said as much back in 2006 when I wrote it first. Interesting, yes, indeed. Mandy adds another twist to the triple spiral, which is maiden, mother, crone, birth, life, death. Yes, and we certainly think about the goddess in her various aspects. Yep. Again, who can say yes or no that's relevant or irrelevant? You know, nobody can say. Nobody can dismiss it. The Druids used psilocybin, and the spirals are from their visions while under the influence. ? Says Hibernia 63. That has been suggested by several archaeologists in recent times, actually, that you know, the megalithic art is reminiscent of symbols that are seen in alternate states of consciousness. So again, a valid possibility. We certainly see a lot of them in the modern era over the last couple of months. In late autumn, I have seen lots of mushroom pickers at different places. It seems to be a thing a habit that's growing. Um, Irish technical thinker also says, hate the way scientists say wishful thinking, but yet they believe that a big bang happened, a big explosion by accident, by nothing, by chance that created everything. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Robin Sherwood says, can't imagine them building it with the typical winters we have in Ireland now. Robin, the curious thing with Newgrange is that because it was probably built by a community where farmers, it has been suggested by a number of archaeologists that it was actually built at a quiet time in the agricultural calendar, not necessarily in the winter, by the way. Could have been built between the sowing of the crops and the harvest in the summer, you know? And in any case, um, our winters aren't bad. I mean, we don't have 6 or 10 feet of snow to contend with, so that's a factor too. You know, the winters were probably colder and clearer when Newgrange was built, says Robin. Well, we know. Actually, I think it is speculated or stipulated, or not stipulated. It is postulated that it may have been a degree or two warmer earlier in the Neolithic, but that the climate did deteriorate. It got colder and wetter. I don't know where that data comes from, but it's in Robert Hensey's book, New New Light. What's it called? First Light, which is about Newgrange. Okay, I think I'm up to speed. Dara says, got Island of the Setting Sun for my birthday last week, Anthony. We'll start it ASAP. Brilliant. You'll enjoy that. And I've no doubt that it will result in many questions being asked. Yeah, cake. We'd pay Anthony in cake, says Mes Marion. I wouldn't say no to cake either, to be honest now, you know. And if anybody wants to bring me a wee dram and a wee little flask with the ishkabaha in it, I certainly wouldn't say no. Anyway, look, we could definitely, and I did. We did 5 or 6 back-to-back episodes about Newgrange in the, I think that was in the 80s. I was going to say not in the 1980s, in the number 80s. But I'll try to find out very quickly. So if you're interested in further exploration of Newgrange, yes, Newgrange, episode 74, Newgrange, The Test of Time, episode 75, Newgrange, Tomb or Womb, episode 76, Newgrange, Mata and Lech Ben, episode 77 was about Newgrange, Cooperation or Forced Labour, episode 78 was Newgrange, What Did the Folklore Tell Us, which is, we've been repeating some of that in this episode. And 79 was this continuation of the same theme. And episode 80 was the excavation and restoration of Newgrange. Episode 83 was Newgrange Myths Altrum Chiagavether, episode 1, and we had, I think, 2 episodes of that. So lots and lots of stuff there for you to peruse at your leisure. Anyway, have a fantastic winter solstice. Anybody who's in the States or who's west of us here in Ireland, have a fantastic winter solstice. Anybody who's east of us and who's already in the 22nd, all I can say is I hope that the coming year brings you warmth and light and health and happiness. At the moment, we have apparently a particularly virulent strain of COVID-19 in Britain, which has resulted in a terrible situation where the transport networks between Britain and France are completely closed down, and almost completely closed down between Britain and Ireland. And that's not good. So we just hope and pray and gather collectively as a wonderful sort of online clan and family in the hope that 2021 brings better fortunes and an end to this horrible pandemic. In the meantime, do your best to stay safe and stay healthy and to socially isolate or distance, to use hand sanitizer and wash your hands, and to use a mask to prevent the spread. If you're a mask denier and a COVID denier, I don't want your angry comments on these videos later on. I will just remove them because I'm just not interested. I'm sorry. If you deny it, that's your business, but I hope it doesn't catch you out. In the meantime, to everyone else, have a great winter solstice and a great Christmas. That is not the end of the live streams for this week. We'll do a book talk over the next few days, but I will probably look to take a bit of a break over the Christmas period from everything and just relax for a few days. And I hope that you all get the chance to do likewise. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that episode about Newgrange and the solstice. Don't forget to tune in to the solstice link, which somebody provided earlier tomorrow on gov.ie. That's the government website, gov.ie. It's a long URL, but you should be able to find it with a quick Google search. 8:45 a.m. Irish time. That's 3:45 a.m. if you're in New York or on the East Coast. And that is 45 minutes past midnight if you're in San Francisco or Washington State or anywhere like that. So perhaps those of you in the Western states just have to stay up a little bit late. Those of you who are on the East Coast will have to go to bed for a few hours early, perhaps, and set your alarm early. And those of you in the rest of the world will just look out for the time zone changes. In the meantime, Colosov, Slán go fóill. Oh no, there's four. There's Slán go fóill, Colosov. I know Togabuge is the last one. What's the one I'm missing? Oh, I'll remember now when I'm finished. Anyway, never mind. Tá sé chréich na. If I'm not speaking to you between now and then, have a great Christmas. I'm hoping, as I say, to do an episode of Book Talk, maybe tomorrow or Wednesday evening. And don't forget, next Monday, which is the 28th, we will have a very special guest in the form of Morgan Daimler, who will be here to talk about her translation of Cát Maithre. And I will let you know at the earliest opportunity when Eddie replies to me. Elaine says she has the alarm set for 2:30 a.m. Fair play to you, Elaine. Good to see that. We'll hopefully be watching. Fingers crossed for the weather. It didn't allow the Great Conjunction's closest approach to be witnessed this evening. But anyway, in the meantime, what can we say? Everyone's saying goodnight. Kelly, blessings to you and yours, Anthony and Coda. Everybody's forgetting Saskia. Don't forget Saskia. Saskia is the quiet one. But good night, everyone, and slán go fóill. Togabuge. Bye.